Hello, Brainiacs! Are you ready for more adventures deep inside your skull? In our previous episode, we marveled at the incredible world of savants. These are those rare individuals with mind-bending mental abilities that seem to defy the laws of nature. We saw people capable of remembering entire encyclopedias word for word or drawing massive, intricate cities with photographic detail after seeing them just once from a helicopter. In many ways, they were like real-life mental superheroes, weren't they? But that exploration left us with a nagging question, one that almost all of us have asked ourselves at some point in our lives. Could we, ordinary mortals, train ourselves to be something like a savant? Could we actually biohack our brains to unlock those hidden superpowers that seem tucked away in the corners of the human mind? Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if you could remember every single book you ever read. Imagine recalling every face you see on the street or every conversation you have with the exact same ease as flipping through a perfectly organized index in a library. It sounds like pure science fiction, I know. But the idea of boosting our minds and going beyond our normal cognitive limits is something that has fascinated humanity since the beginning of time. Nowadays, we hear so much about biohacking. This is the idea of tuning our bodies and our minds to perform at their absolute peak. In this context, the question of becoming a savant takes on a whole new dimension. It merges with the modern promise of almost limitless improvement. Can we really, with just a bit of training, some smart pills, or perhaps some ingenious new technology, simply plug in a savant module to our brain? Let us think about the most famous cases for a second. There is Derek Paravicini, the blind autistic pianist who can play any melody he hears, no matter how complex the structure, after a single listen. His brain, somehow, translates sound into a perfect internal map of keys and chords. Or consider Stephen Wiltshire, the man often called the human camera. He draws entire cityscapes from memory with astonishing precision after just one short helicopter flight. These are innate abilities that seemingly arise from a unique and specific brain configuration. It is almost as if their internal hardware came with special, high-end software pre-installed at the factory. But then we have people like Joshua Foer. He was a journalist who, without being a savant, trained his memory to the point of winning the United States Memory Championship in just 1 year of practice. He showed us that with the right techniques and a lot of fierce dedication, a normal brain can do extraordinary things. These feats are so impressive they almost seem like magic to the uninitiated observer. This raises the big question. Where exactly does the line lie between the innate genius of a savant and the rigorous training of a memory champion? Is mental biohacking a real gateway to replicating savant abilities, or is it just an elegant way of saying we should study hard and methodically? The answer, as it always is in the fascinating world of the brain, is a labyrinth of connections and possibilities. It is a path that leads us to unravel the secrets of our own brain's astonishing plasticity. Get ready, because the truth will surprise you. The truth is that the idea of biohacking your brain to become a savant overnight is, unfortunately, pure Hollywood fantasy. Savants are not people who simply unlocked a hidden level of their brain that the rest of us are ignoring. Rather, their exceptional abilities are often linked to a very particular brain configuration. In many cases, this can be the result of early brain damage, a developmental condition like autism, or innate differences in how brain regions connect and operate from the moment of birth. It is as if their brain's operating system came with specialized factory software. This allows for some truly astonishing functions, but it often comes with a bunch of other programs that do not work as well or that run very differently. This creates a unique and often delicate balance of incredible strengths and significant challenges. To understand why we cannot be savants on demand, we have to look at our intrinsic brain architecture. Imagine your brain as a gigantic and extremely complex city that is full of life. In this metaphor, the neurons are the buildings, including the houses, the offices, and the massive data centers. The billions of connections between them are the interconnected highways and roads where information, the neural messengers, travels constantly. In a typical brain, traffic flows in a balanced way everywhere. This allows us to do many different things at once. We can speak, feel emotions, remember the past, plan for the future, and move our bodies with precision. All of this happens in an integrated and fluid manner. It is a multifunctional city where all areas are well connected and coordinated with one another. But in the brain of a savant, the city map looks very different. Some of those highways might be closed, underdeveloped, or they might function in a very atypical way. However, other roads are incredibly reinforced. They channel a massive and unstoppable flow of traffic towards one very specific function. It is as if, in our brain city, some roads to the social center or the planning area were cut off or had permanent detours. In return, a superhighway leading to a gigantic library works perfectly. This allows for instant and detailed access to every book and every piece of data with astonishing speed and precision. This extreme specialization is what allows for abilities like photographic memory or instant mathematical calculation. However, this specialization often comes with challenges in other areas, such as social skills, abstract language, or complex planning abilities. It is not a general improvement of the entire system. Instead, it is a reorganization or a specialization that is incredibly difficult to replicate at will in a brain that already has an established and balanced architecture. Trying to replicate this with sheer willpower is like asking a standard family car to transform into a Formula 1 race car just by wishing it to happen. The original hardware and software of a savant are fundamentally different from our own. Although the idea of fundamentally reconfiguring our brain to be a pure savant is a pipe dream, we can learn to imitate and enhance some of their most impressive strategies. This is where real mental biohacking comes into the picture. This is the kind of hacking with a solid scientific basis, not the kind you see in science fiction movies. It is not about creating a completely new brain or installing a magical computer chip. Instead, it is about optimizing the brain we already have by leveraging its astonishing capacity for change, which we call neuroplasticity. Think of it this way. We cannot change the model of our car or replace its main engine, but we can learn to drive it like a rally champion. We can learn to make the most of its inherent capabilities and every lever at our disposal. We are biohacking in the sense that we are using our own brain's instruction manuals to get the most out of it by building more efficient neural pathways. One of the most famous and effective techniques for boosting memory is the memory palace. The ancient Greeks were already using this millennia ago. It is also known as the method of Loci, which comes from the Latin word for places. Remember Joshua 4, the journalist who became a memory champion in just 1 year? He became an absolute expert in this specific technique. The idea is simple but brilliant. You associate the information you want to remember with specific locations within an environment you know very well. This could be your home, your neighborhood, your habitual route to work, or even a very detailed imaginary palace you create in your mind. For example, if you want to remember a shopping list, you could place the milk at your front door. You could imagine the eggs sitting in the hallway by the coat rack. The bread could be resting on the dining room table, and the apples could be lined up on the bookshelf in the living room. By doing this, you are creating a mental route. When you need to recall the list, you simply walk through your palace in your mind and see the objects interacting with those key points on your route. Our brain is incredibly good at remembering spatial and visual information. In fact, spatial memories are processed in a part of the brain called the hippocampus. This area is vital for long-term memory and navigation. By hooking abstract data, like a list of phone numbers, complex names, historical dates, or scientific concepts, to vivid and often absurd images, we are using our brain's natural and ancestral strengths. It is as if we were turning those boring, hard-to-retain data points into an exciting interactive movie that unfolds in a familiar setting. By adding visual, emotional, and spatial elements, we create multiple hooks for recall. This makes it much easier to retrieve the information later. Memory champions do not have magical brains. They have simply trained these techniques extensively. A 2017 study published in the journal Neuron, led by Dr. Isabella Wagner, showed just how powerful this can be. After only 6 weeks of training with the method of Loci for just 30 minutes a day, participants saw massive improvements. They went from remembering an average of 26 words to 62 words. But the most amazing part was that their brains showed significant functional changes in the regions associated with spatial memory. It was as if they were starting to wire and strengthen new neural pathways specifically for this type of information retrieval. They were making their brains' highways more efficient through practice. Another fascinating mental hack gets us a little closer to the experience of some savants or people with exceptional talents like musicians with perfect pitch. This is the world of synesthesia. Natural synesthesia is a neurological condition where the stimulation of one sense leads to automatic and involuntary experiences in a second sense. For example, some people see numbers with specific colors. Others might hear shapes or even taste words. It is as if the wiring of their senses had crossed in an interesting and consistent way. This offers them a rich, additional layer of reality perception that most of us do not experience. While we cannot develop natural synesthesia at will overnight, science is exploring something called artificial synesthesia. This is done through sensory substitution devices and perceptual training. Imagine a belt that subtly vibrates on your waist at different points depending on the direction of magnetic north. Over time, and after constant exposure, your brain begins to feel where north is without you having to consciously think about the vibrations. It becomes almost like a new sense of orientation, similar to what a migratory bird might experience. Another remarkable example is a device called the BrainPort. This device allows blind people to see the world through their tongue. It works by translating images from a camera into tactile patterns on an electrode array placed on the tongue. Initially, this is very confusing and requires a massive amount of concentration. But with sustained training, the brain begins to interpret these tactile patterns as vision. This allows users to navigate environments and identify objects with surprising effectiveness. It is as if the brain finds an alternative way to process visual information. Once again, neuroplasticity is the star of the show. The brain is incredibly adaptable and is constantly searching for patterns and ways to make sense of the information it receives. When it receives sensory information in an unusual way or through an incorrect channel, like the tongue for vision, it strives to make sense of it. With constant exposure and practice, it can reorganize its neural networks. It creates new connections and strengthens existing ones to establish new interpretations of the world. We are not creating a new sensory organ, but we are teaching the brain to interpret new signals and integrate them into our conscious perception. It is as if we gave our brain's orchestral conductor a completely new score. With time and rehearsals, the conductor learns to lead the orchestra perfectly, creating a new melody of perception. So, what is the fundamental difference between a real savant and someone who uses the memory palace or an artificial synesthesia device? The key lies in spontaneity, ease, and the underlying brain configuration. Savants often exhibit abilities that seem to arise effortlessly. It is almost as if they were reading directly from an internal database with astonishing speed. They do not need a conscious, step-by-step encoding and retrieval process. Their brains are intrinsically wired in a way that facilitates these feats naturally, often from childhood or after a specific brain event. On the other hand, our mental biohacking techniques are more like applications or training programs. We have to install them and execute them with conscious and deliberate effort. They require significant initial effort, sustained practice, and a deliberate application of strategies. These techniques do not grant us the innate ability or the unique brain configuration of a savant. However, they do allow us to expand our own cognitive limits in a truly astonishing way. They demonstrate that our brain is not a static machine with fixed capabilities. Instead, it is a dynamic marvel. It is capable of constantly learning, adapting, reorganizing, and transforming throughout our entire lives. No, you probably will not become a prodigious calculator overnight. You likely will not be able to draw entire cities with a single glance like Stephen Wiltshire. But the true magic and power of mental biohacking do not lie in transforming you into something you are not. Instead, the power lies in making the most of what you already are. You are a human being with an incredibly powerful, adaptable, and knowledge-hungry brain. By understanding how this miraculous organ works and by applying science-based techniques that leverage its flexibility, we can dramatically improve our memory. We can boost our concentration and our creativity. Ultimately, we can enrich our life experience in ways we once thought were impossible. This is living proof that, even without being a savant, each and every one of us has a latent superpower waiting to be discovered, nurtured, and unleashed. And that is far more exciting and real than any science fiction movie because it is something you yourself can start exploring today. Your brain is ready for the challenge. The only question left is whether you are ready to begin the training. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the limits of the human mind and want to keep exploring the wonders of the brain with us, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. See you in the next adventure, Brainiacs. For more information, visit minrora.com.